she yelled at the wrong millionaire. And shockingly, his mother wanted her as a daughter-in-law. She thought she was exposing a cheater, but instead, she yelled at the wrong man, a millionaire, and walked straight into his powerful mother's plan. Now, before we get started, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this one. And tell us in the comments what city and country you're watching from. I always enjoy seeing where our community is tuning in. Scarlett Miller wasn't the type to stay silent. She had a voice that carried, a fire that sparked in the most unlikely moments. And today, that fire was aimed at the man she believed had betrayed her best friend. There he was, red suit, slicked back hair, leaning in across a cafe table, laughing with a woman who seemed far too polished to be anyone's cousin. Scarlett's pulse quickened. Justice had to be served. Her heels struck the floor like drumbeats as she marched past stunned waiters and gasping diners. The cafe fell into silence. Every eye turned to the young woman with clenched fists and blazing conviction. Scarlett didn't hesitate. Her words exploded across the marble room, laced with fury, each one sharper than the last. The man blinked, baffled, while the woman beside him nearly spilled her tea. And then, with the calmest voice in the room, the woman spoke. Her tone wasn't defensive, it wasn't apologetic. It carried something else: authority, amusement, even approval. Scarlett froze. Had she struck the wrong target? The diners leaned forward, waiting. The man in the red suit looked more confused than guilty, and the woman beside him, she smiled as if she had just discovered a rare treasure. That's when Scarlett realized she hadn't just made a scene, she had stepped into a story that would change her life forever. Scarlett's breath caught the moment her eyes locked on the man in the corner of the cafe. The red suit was impossible to miss, tailored within an inch of perfection. The color bold enough to demand attention, even in a place like Park Avenue, where wealth wasn't displayed. It was worn like second skin. Scarlett narrowed her eyes. That was Mark. It had to be. The same ridiculous red suit, the same slicked back hair that screamed arrogance. She shifted her weight against the window, half hidden behind the glass, and her gaze slid to the woman across from him. Blonde hair, styled with deliberate elegance, pearls glinting under the chandelier. She laughed far too loudly, leaning across the table with the kind of confidence that only came from years of privilege. Scarlett's gut twisted. Lisa, her best friend, was at home waiting for texts that would never come, believing in promises that had already been broken. Scarlett muttered under her breath. Jerk. Shameless coward. Sitting here flaunting it in broad daylight. The scene pressed against her chest like a weight. Lisa deserved better than this charade. Scarlett thought back to all those nights Lisa had confided in her. The giddy tone when she mentioned that Mark wanted to take her to Paris. The hopeful gleam in her eyes when he promised brunch at this very cafe. And now here he was, raising a glass with another woman, laughing as if loyalty was beneath him. Scarlett clenched her fists inside her coat pockets. It wasn't just betrayal, it was disrespect. Disrespect to Lisa. To every woman who put her faith in men who pretended to be more than they were. Scarlett wasn't one to swallow injustice. If Lisa wouldn't stand up for herself, then Scarlett would. Her eyes flicked back to the man. His watch gleamed when he lifted his hand, not just expensive, but one of those rare pieces you only saw in magazines. Scarlett's stomach churned. Of course he would flaunt wealth too. That's what men like him did. Money in one hand, deceit in the other. The cafe itself felt like a stage waiting for her entrance. Waiters glided between tables, balancing porcelain cups. The hum of conversation was steady, but Scarlett hardly heard it. She only heard the drumbeat of her own heart. The man in red leaned back, lips curling into a smile that made her skin prickle with anger. She remembered their first meeting months ago, when Lisa had introduced them at a small rooftop party. Scarlett had thought then that his charm was rehearsed, that his stories of business deals and summer homes were stitched together to impress. Lisa, innocent and trusting, had swallowed every word. Scarlett had wanted to warn her, but she'd held back. She regretted that now. She pressed a palm flat against the window pane, grounding herself. The man's laugh rang out, and Scarlett's resolve crystallized. She would not stand here like some powerless onlooker. Lisa had always been the gentle one, but Scarlett had always been the fighter. Her mind was already scripting the confrontation. The words sharp, the timing perfect. She imagined the cafe falling into silence, the sound of her voice cutting through the pretense, the look on his face when he realized he had finally been caught. Justice, even messy justice, was better than silence. Scarlett straightened, fixing the lapel of her coat. She didn't care about the consequences. She didn't care if the entire cafe stared. For Lisa, for every broken promise, she would do this. Her heels clicked as she stepped toward the brass handles of the cafe door. She was ready to storm in and tear apart his lies, ready to drag betrayal into the open. What she didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that the man waiting inside wasn't Mark at all. He was someone else entirely, and her storm was about to strike the wrong target. Scarlett's pulse roared in her ears as she pushed open the glass doors of the cafe. The warmth of polished marble, fresh pastries, and expensive perfume enveloped her, but she barely noticed. Her heels struck the floor like gunfire, each step aimed at the man in red. Conversations faltered, cups clinked against saucers, and a nervous waiter stepped forward, hand raised as if to intercept her. "Ma'am, reservation only." But Scarlett swept past him, eyes locked on the corner table. She stopped dead in front of the man, her chest rising and falling like she'd run a mile. The blonde woman beside him blinked, startled. The man himself looked up slowly, green eyes narrowing with confusion. Scarlett planted her hands on the table. "Mark, you rotten, shameless cucumber. You cheap traitor." The cafe froze. A fork dropped somewhere behind her. A businessman at the next table nearly spilled his espresso. Scarlett's voice rose, sharp and unwavering. "My best friend trusted you. She thought you were planning a future together. And here you are, laughing with another woman in the same cafe where she sat waiting for you. You're a disgrace in a red suit. What are you supposed to be, Santa Claus of betrayal?" A ripple of laughter ran through the room before being smothered by stunned silence. The woman across from him coughed into her tea, nearly choking. "Excuse me," she said, voice elegant but edged with disbelief. Scarlett whirled on her. "And you? No offense, ma'am. You look refined, polished, like you stepped out of a Chanel ad. But don't you think you're a little too old for this? My friend is young, truly young, no Botox, no cover-ups. You should be ashamed sitting here with someone else's fiancé." Gasps fluttered across the cafe. The man in red finally spoke, his voice calm, measured, and very unlike Mark's. "I'm sorry. Who are you?" Scarlett scoffed. "Don't play dumb. I'm Scarlett Miller, Lisa's best friend, the woman you promised Paris but couldn't even deliver brunch." He blinked again, baffled. "Lisa? Paris? I've never met a Lisa in my life." The blonde woman, gray at the roots, her poise undeniable, set down her cup with a deliberate clink. Then, with a smile that could cut glass, she leaned back and studied Scarlett as if she were something unexpected and rare. "My dear," she said softly, but with a clarity that carried through the cafe, "you've just yelled at the wrong man." Scarlett froze. "What?" The woman's smile widened, not cruel but intrigued. "This is my son, Grant Costa. He is not engaged, he does not know Elisa. He is, in fact, very much single." Scarlett's world tilted. Her eyes darted between the man's green gaze, not Mark's brown, and his darker hair, his sharper jawline. Her stomach plummeted as she turned her head. 2 tables back, the real Mark, also in a red suit, sat with a blonde of his own. When he spotted Scarlett, his face drained of color and he slipped away, abandoning his coffee and his conquest. "Oh no," Scarlett whispered. "No, no, no." Grant Costa tilted his head, lips twitching with a smirk he tried to suppress. "Well, this is memorable." Scarlett wanted the marble floor to open and swallow her whole. Instead, she stammered, "I thought." But the woman, composed as ever, cut in with a gleam in her eyes. "What's your full name, dear?" Scarlett blinked. Scarlett Miller." The woman rose to her feet, lifting Scarlett's hand with surprising strength and announcing loud enough for every witness to hear. "Scarlett Miller, a name with weight, a personality with fire. You are perfect." The room gasped. Grant nearly choked. Scarlett's jaw dropped. "Perfect for what?" she asked weakly. The woman straightened her pearls, eyes bright. "Perfect to set my son straight. I am Elena Costa, and I have just found the woman my son is going to marry." The cafe erupted in whispers, stunned stares bouncing between Scarlett, Grant, and the formidable matriarch now grinning as though destiny had just walked in wearing heels and fury. Scarlett's throat tightened. She had come to expose a cheater. Instead, she had just been claimed by one of the most powerful women in Manhattan as a future daughter-in-law. Scarlett's mouth went dry. The cafe had turned into a theater, every diner frozen mid-bite, eyes locked on her. She could feel the weight of their stares pressing into her back. Her chest rose and fell, her face burning. She wanted to vanish, but Elena Costa wasn't about to let her escape. "Perfect," Elena repeated, her voice carrying with aristocratic ease. Scarlett Miller, bold enough to storm into a cafe, fearless enough to call out a man she believed was unfaithful, and sharp enough to do it without flinching. "You are exactly what my son needs," Grant groaned, dragging a hand down his face. "Mother, stop. This is absurd. She barged in here and insulted us in front of an entire cafe." "Exactly," Elena said, eyes sparkling. Do you know how long I've waited for someone to break through that icy shield of yours? Years, Grant. Years of watching you surround yourself with shallow women who fawn over your bank account and your last name. This woman," she squeezed Scarlett's hand tighter, "isn't afraid of you. That alone makes her extraordinary." Scarlett yanked her hand back, stumbling a step. "Wait, hold on. You think I'm, what? Marriage material? I don't even know him. I thought he was Mark. This is insane." Elena straightened, her pearls catching the light. "Insane? No, my dear. Destiny. I won't waste time with small talk. Grant is 32. He needs a wife, not another empty fling. And you, Scarlett Miller, have just proven you're the only woman who can stand toe-to-toe with him." The cafe erupted in hushed whispers. Phones tilted discreetly to record. Fingers hovered over screens. Scarlett's humiliation doubled. She could practically see her name trending in some Manhattan gossip blog. Grant stood abruptly, pushing his chair back. "Mother, you can't just announce a marriage in public. This is the 21st century." Elena didn't flinch. "Sit down, Grant, or I'll remind you how easily fortunes can be reshaped when heirs forget their responsibilities." The sharpness in her tone made even Scarlett pause. This wasn't just a doting mother meddling in her son's love life. This was a matriarch who wielded power like a sword. Scarlett raised her hands in protest. "Look, Mrs. Costa, Elena, this has been one massive mistake. I don't want anything to do with your son's life. I just wanted to stand up for my friend. That's it. I'm not signing up for whatever this is." Elena's smile widened. Too calm, too knowing. "Oh, my dear, you already have. You embarrassed my son in front of 36 witnesses. You called him a rotten cucumber. That kind of defamation doesn't simply vanish." Scarlett blinked. "Defamation? Are you serious?" "Very," Elena replied. "You have two choices. Marry him and prove that your passion comes with loyalty, or face legal action. I have the best lawyers in Manhattan. I could keep you tied up in court for years." Gasps circled the room. Scarlett felt her knees weaken. This woman wasn't bluffing. She had the power, the money, the reputation to make good on every word. Grant's jaw tightened. "Mother, you can't threaten her into marriage." Elena lifted a brow. "Watch me. You, Grant, need someone who isn't impressed by titles or wealth. And you, Scarlett, need to learn what it means to harness that fire instead of wasting it on the wrong men." Scarlett's heart raced. This wasn't just embarrassing anymore. It was terrifying. She had no desire to marry a stranger, let alone one glaring at her like she'd ruined his week. Yet Elena's eyes, sharp as glass, made it clear there would be no easy escape. She glanced around. Diners stared, captivated, waiting for her answer. Phones still pointed her way. If she refused, the humiliation would explode across social media within hours. And if Elena sued, she couldn't afford even a single consultation with a Manhattan lawyer. Scarlett swallowed hard. This isn't fair." "No," Elena said gently, though her eyes never softened. "It's life, and life doesn't wait for fairness. It demands decisions." The silence stretched. Scarlett could hear her own pulse hammering. Grant rubbed his temples, muttering under his breath. Elena waited like a queen certain of victory. Finally, Scarlett exhaled a shaky breath. "Fine, I'll do it. I'll marry him." The cafe exploded in whispers and gasps. Elena clapped her hands once, delighted, while Grant sank into his chair as though the ground had betrayed him. Scarlett stood frozen, her voice still echoing in her own ears. She had agreed to something she didn't even understand, and nothing in her life would ever be the same. Scarlett barely remembered how she made it out of the cafe. One minute she was trapped under the weight of Elena Costa's stare, the next she was stumbling through Park Avenue, the winter wind biting against her cheeks, her heart still hammering. The world felt unreal, like she had walked off the edge of her own life and into someone else's script. By the time she reached the apartment she shared with Lisa, her heels had rubbed blisters on her feet and her nerves were frayed raw. She shoved the door open, tossed her purse to the floor, and leaned against the wall, chest heaving. Lisa looked up from the couch, where she was curled in sweatpants. Netflix paused on the screen, a bowl of popcorn balanced on her lap. "Scar? What's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost." Scarlett laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. "Ghost would have been easier." "Lisa, you're not going to believe this." Lisa muted the TV and sat forward, concern clouding her expression. "What happened? Did you see Mark?" Scarlett dropped onto the couch beside her, words tumbling out before she could stop them. "I saw him. At least I thought I did. Red suit, slick hair, sitting with some woman. I stormed in there, Lisa. I marched right up, and I yelled at him, called him a rotten cucumber in front of the entire cafe." Lisa's jaw dropped. "You what?" "I thought it was Mark, but it wasn't. It was someone else. And not just anyone else. Grant Costa, as in Costa Tech. And his mother was sitting right there." Lisa blinked. Wait, Costa Tech? Like billionaire Costa Tech? Yes, Scarlett groaned, burying her face in her hands. And his mother, Elena Costa, she said I was perfect for her son. She basically announced to the entire cafe that I was going to marry him. And then she gave me an ultimatum. Either I agree or she sues me for defamation. Silence stretched for 3 beats. Lisa's eyes went wide, then wider, then her lips twitched. A small sound slipped out. Half gasp, half snort. Lisa, don't laugh, Scarlett begged. But Lisa couldn't help it. She clutched her stomach, popcorn spilling to the floor as laughter shook her. Scarlett Miller, only you could go out for coffee, accuse the wrong man, and come home betrothed to a billionaire. This is insane. Scarlett glared, though her lips twitched despite herself. I'm doomed, and you're laughing. Lisa wiped tears from her cheeks. I can't help it. It's like something out of a drama, but oh my God, Scar, you actually agreed? They cornered me. She threatened to sue me, Lisa. What was I supposed to do? Walk out and let Manhattan's most powerful woman drag me through court? Lisa leaned back, still shaking with giggles. You're unbelievable. But you know what? Maybe this isn't the worst thing. At least now you'll have stories for a lifetime. And honestly, she's not bad looking, right? Scarlett groaned, pulling a pillow over her face. Lisa, please. Lisa softened, reaching over to squeeze her hand. Hey, you've always had my back. You saw Mark today, didn't you? Scarlett sat up, nodding, 2 tables back, with some blonde. As soon as he saw me, he bolted. Lisa's smile faded, replaced by steel. She grabbed her phone and scrolled to his number. What are you doing? Scarlett asked. Ending it. Lisa hit call, then pressed speaker. Mark's smooth voice answered. Hey babe, don't babe me. We're done. I know you've been cheating, and I don't care what excuse you have. Don't call me again. What? Lisa, you're being dramatic. We're fine. She hung up without hesitation. Scarlett's mouth fell open. Lisa. Lisa set the phone down, her expression calm, almost relieved. Thanks to your chaos, I finally saw the truth, and I feel free. Scarlett's chest swelled, pride replacing her panic. Whatever madness she had stumbled into, at least it had given Lisa the courage she deserved. For the first time all day, Scarlett laughed. Real, unshaken laughter. Because somehow, against all odds, their friendship had come out stronger. Scarlett barely slept. The city outside her window glowed through the night, headlights dragging streaks of light across her ceiling, while her mind replayed Elena Costa's words over and over. By morning, she wasn't sure if the last 24 hours had been reality or some fever dream. Yet at exactly 1 o'clock, her phone buzzed with a message. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Madison Avenue Registry Office. Bring a witness, EC. Scarlett's stomach dropped. There was no escape. Elena Costa had already set the stage. By the next afternoon, Scarlett stood outside the registry building in her only formal dress, a navy blue number she usually reserved for job interviews. The hem brushed just below her knees, her hair pinned back in a neat bun. Beside her, Lisa clutched a manila folder of papers and whispered, I still can't believe this is happening. You're actually about to marry a billionaire. Correction, Scarlett muttered, tugging at her sleeves. I'm about to marry a complete stranger because his mother threatened to sue me. The registry office was utilitarian. Polished linoleum floors, beige walls, a faint smell of paper and ink. No flowers, no candles, no romance. Just desks, stamps, and clerks shuffling papers. It was a far cry from the sweeping weddings Lisa used to dream about. Grant arrived exactly at 2, punctual and polished in a charcoal gray suit. His face betrayed none of the chaos from yesterday, only an expression of weary resignation. With him was James, his personal lawyer, a middle-aged man with silver hair and a briefcase so pristine it looked untouched by time. Miss Miller, James said, shaking her hand with the formality of someone signing a merger, not a marriage. This will take 15 minutes. 15 minutes? Scarlett whispered to Lisa. It takes me longer to cook pasta. Lisa stifled a laugh, earning a glare from Grant. They were led into a small chamber where a clerk waited with a stack of documents. The room was silent, except for the shuffle of papers and the scratching of pens. The words marriage certificate stared up at Scarlett in stark black ink. Her hand trembled as she held the pen. This wasn't a joke anymore. This wasn't Elena's theatrics. With one signature, her life would legally bind itself to Grant Costa, a man she had insulted in public less than 24 hours earlier. State your name, the clerk instructed. Scarlett Miller, she said, her voice thin. Grant Costa, came his steady reply. James adjusted his glasses, pointing where they each needed to sign. Here, an initial here. His tone was dry, clinical, the same tone one might use for property deeds. Scarlett's pen hovered. This is insane, she whispered. Insane, Grant muttered under his breath. Doesn't even cover it. But they signed anyway. line after line, initials and signatures until the final page was stamped with a heavy seal. The clerk glanced up with practiced detachment. "Congratulations, you are now legally husband and wife." Scarlett exhaled shakily, as though the air itself had betrayed her. No rings, no vows, no kiss, just a cold stamp echoing through her future. James gathered the papers into his briefcase with brisk efficiency. "The marriage is valid. Mrs. Costa will be pleased." "Don't call me Mrs. Costa," Scarlett said quickly, her cheeks warming. "That sounds wrong." Grant buttoned his suit jacket, expression unreadable. "It's legally correct?" Lisa leaned close, whispering with a smirk. "Well, at least you can put married to a billionaire on your resume." Scarlett shot her a look, half desperate, half amused. "Lisa, not helping?" They stepped out into the afternoon sun. The city bustled around them, oblivious to the absurdity that had just taken place inside. Tourists snapped photos, taxis honked, a street vendor shouted about hot pretzels. Life went on as usual, while Scarlett's had been completely rewritten in under 20 minutes. As they descended the steps, Grant turned to her. "We should discuss living arrangements. My apartment has space." Scarlett blinked. "Living arrangements? You mean?" "You're my wife now," he said flatly. "It would look suspicious if you didn't move in." Her pulse spiked. Married, wife, a billionaire's stranger bride. Scarlett swallowed hard, realizing the ink on those papers wasn't just signatures. It was a cage, and she had just stepped inside. Scarlett stood frozen in front of the glass doors of Grant Costa's apartment building, her suitcase wheels rattling against the sidewalk. The doorman gave her a polite nod, opening the gold-trimmed entrance with a flourish. She stepped inside and instantly felt small. The lobby soared 3 stories high, marble floors polished to a mirror finish, chandeliers glittering like captive constellations. Even the air smelled expensive, a faint trace of orchids and something imported she couldn't place. Grant was already waiting by the private elevator, arms crossed, his expression a mix of resignation and quiet annoyance. "Come on," he said, swiping his card across a sleek panel. The doors slid open without a sound. Scarlett dragged her suitcase in, muttering under her breath, "Elevators should at least make a ding. Otherwise, how are normal people supposed to know it's here?" Grant glanced at her, one brow raised. "Normal people don't live here." The elevator doors opened to reveal a penthouse that looked more like a magazine spread than a home. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, glass walls glowing gold under the late afternoon sun. The living room stretched endlessly with cream leather sofas, sculptures on pedestals, and bookshelves arranged so perfectly it seemed no one had ever touched them. Scarlett dropped her suitcase just inside the doorway. "Wow, you could fit my entire apartment in your foyer." Grant loosened his tie, tossing it onto a marble console. "The guest room is down the hall. It has its own bathroom. Make yourself comfortable." Scarlett frowned. "Guest room? Not wife room?" He shot her a dry look. "This isn't a honeymoon, it's an arrangement." She rolled her eyes, romantic as ever. Later that evening, hungry and restless, Scarlett decided to make pancakes, her comfort food for impossible days. She wandered into the kitchen, blinking at the gleaming appliances. Every surface sparkled in brushed steel, the stove's control panel studded with more buttons than an airplane cockpit. "How hard can it be?" she muttered, reaching for flour. 10 minutes later, smoke curled toward the ceiling. The alarm screeched, lights flashing red. Scarlett flailed with a dish towel, fanning the air. "It's just pancakes, not arson." Grant burst into the kitchen in his pajamas, barefoot, hair tousled from sleep. "What did you do?" Scarlett glared, brandishing the spatula. "Your spaceship stove doesn't speak English. How was I supposed to know the burners are touch-sensitive?" He grabbed the control panel, flicked a switch, and the flames died instantly. "That," he said through clenched teeth, "is a $15,000 professional range." Scarlett blinked. $15,000 for a stove? You could buy a car for that." "I already have 3 cars." "Of course you do." She crossed her arms. "Do any of them make pancakes? Because this thing sure doesn't." For a moment, silence hung between them, then Grant snorted. It was quick, reluctant, but unmistakable. Scarlett grinned. Was that a laugh? Did the mighty Grant Costa just laugh? He turned away, muttering, "You're impossible." She leaned against the counter, smirking. "And you're starting to realize you like it." The following days unfolded in a rhythm neither expected. Scarlett left her shoes by the door, something Grant's spotless floors had never known. She rearranged his bookshelves from color-coded aesthetic to actual topics, which horrified him. He retaliated by reorganizing her closet, lining every blouse by shade and sleeve length. "You ruined my system," she protested. "I improved your chaos," he replied, smirking. Each skirmish ended the same, Scarlett grinning, Grant pretending not to smile. Beneath the banter, though, something shifted. For the first time in years, his penthouse felt lived in, not staged. And for Scarlett, the apartment stopped feeling like a cage and more like a strange, reluctant adventure. One evening, as she curled up on the sofa with popcorn, Grant paused in the doorway, tie loosened after a long day at the office. His eyes lingered, unreadable, as though he wasn't quite sure what to make of the whirlwind woman who had stormed into his world. Scarlett met his gaze, raised a single piece of popcorn, and said, "Want some, Mr. Rotten Cucumber?" Grant exhaled, half a sigh, half a laugh. And just like that, the walls between them cracked, not broken, but no longer unshakable. By the third morning, Scarlett had decided something drastic. Grant's penthouse might have been expensive, but it had no soul. The furniture sat in perfect symmetry. Art pieces hung like they belonged in a museum catalog, and the color scheme was so sterile, she half expected nurses to walk in with clipboards. "This place feels like a waiting room for rich people," she muttered as she circled the living room, coffee in hand. Grant had left early for a board meeting, so Scarlett seized the opportunity. She rolled up her sleeves, pushed the cream leather sofa out of alignment, dragged the armchairs closer to the window, and stacked throw pillows in a riot of mismatched colors she found hidden in a linen closet. She even shifted the abstract painting 3 inches lower because, in her words, art should meet people at eye level, not tower over them like a judgmental aunt. By the time she was done, the space looked less like a glossy magazine cover and more like someone actually lived there. Grant returned that evening, loosened tie, briefcase in hand, and froze in the doorway. His eyes swept across the room, the shifted furniture, the uneven pillows, the books stacked in haphazard piles by theme instead of by color. "What," he said slowly, "happened to my apartment?" Scarlett looked up from the floor where she was arranging a plant on the coffee table. "I fixed it." "Fixed it?" His voice cracked in disbelief. "It wasn't broken. It was lifeless. Now it's got energy. Look, more light by the window, books where you can actually find them, and bonus, plants that breathe oxygen. You're welcome." Grant set his briefcase down with exaggerated care like he was containing an explosion. "Scarlett, I had that library arranged by color. It was orderly." She smirked. "Orderly, yes. Useful? Not even close. You want Tolstoy? He's not green spine section B. He's in classics. Top shelf." Grant pinched the bridge of his nose. "You're gonna drive me insane." Scarlett leaned back on her heels, grinning. "Probably, but at least you won't die of boredom." The next morning, she woke to find her closet transformed. Every blouse, every pair of jeans, every scarf had been rehung and reorganized by shade, fabric, and sleeve length. Shoes were lined in precise rows, belts rolled into perfect spirals, and handbags nested like Russian dolls. She stood in stunned silence, hands on her hips. "You did not." Grant leaned casually in the doorway, arms crossed. "Now that is what organization looks like. You invaded my closet. You invaded my apartment." Scarlett stomped her foot. "I had a system." "Chaos isn't a system." She grabbed a blouse and waved it at him. "Work clothes on one side, weekend clothes on the other. That was my system. Now you've turned it into some kind of department store display." Grant's lips twitched, betraying the hint of a smile. "Admit it, it looks better." Scarlett narrowed her eyes, then laughed despite herself. "Better for who? Robots?" They stared at each other across the closet, the tension oddly playful. For the first time, Grant didn't look like the aloof billionaire she'd been forced to marry. He looked human, smug, yes, but amused in a way that softened his sharp edges. The battles continued. When Grant hid the TV remote to get under her skin, Scarlett figured out how to control everything from her phone. When he swapped the sugar with salt, she made salty lemonade and insisted it was a new Southern recipe. Each prank only fueled the next, until their nightly banter became the rhythm of the penthouse. One evening, Scarlett caught him watching her as she rearranged the pillows yet again. "What?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Grant shrugged, almost sheepish. "You make this place different." Scarlett tilted her head. "Different good or different bad?" He hesitated, then said quietly, "Different necessary." The words lingered longer than either of them expected. Scarlett turned back to the pillows, hiding a small smile. And Grant, for once, didn't bother to rearrange them when she left the room. Elena Costa's office overlooked the Manhattan skyline, glass walls framing the city like a painting she alone had commissioned. At 70, she wore power like a second skin, pearls around her neck, a steel pen in her hand, and an expression that made even seasoned executives squirm. Across from her sat Richard Halden, the Costa family's lawyer for more than 30 years. His gray suit was immaculate, his tie knotted with military precision. But his eyes carried the weariness of a man who'd spent decades trying and failing to temper Elena's audacity. Let me be certain I've understood this correctly, Richard said, adjusting his glasses. You want 20% of Costatec transferred into Scarlett Miller's name, effective immediately. Elena nodded without hesitation. Yes, make it official today. Richard exhaled slowly, as though bracing for impact. She's been your son's wife for 3 days. 2.5, Elena corrected, eyes glittering. 2.5 days, he repeated. She's not even aware of what she married into. She doesn't know Grant is the sitting president of Costatec. She doesn't know the scope of the holdings, the partnerships, the board. She doesn't even know she's a Costa in more than name. Elena leaned back in her chair, folding her hands. All of which makes this decision perfect. She is untainted by greed. She is unimpressed by titles. When she stood in that cafe and called my son a rotten cucumber, she demonstrated something rare: courage. Brutal, unfiltered honesty. That's the steel Costatec has lacked. Richard's brow furrowed. And you believe she is fit to wield this level of power? I don't believe, Elena said, her voice sharp. I know. Scarlett Miller is the only person I have seen in years who will challenge Grant instead of enabling him. Every other woman wilted under the weight of his bank account. Scarlett walked in blind, mistook him for a cheater, and still refused to bow. She is precisely what this empire needs. Richard opened his briefcase, retrieving a stack of legal documents. You realize the board will erupt when they learn of this. A stranger, a young woman with no business experience, suddenly holds 1/5 of the company? They'll see it as reckless. Elena smiled faintly. The board already underestimates me. Let them underestimate her too. That will be their mistake. Richard hesitated before sliding the papers across the desk. And Grant? He will feel betrayed. You've spent years grooming him to lead, and now you're giving his wife the power to check him. He should feel betrayed, Elena said coolly. He's brilliant, yes, but too insulated, too stubborn. Power has coddled him. Scarlett will challenge him. She'll remind him that authority is not entitlement. If he cannot rise to meet her strength, then he does not deserve the empire. The room fell silent, except for the scratching of Elena's pen as she signed her name across the bottom of the transfer documents. The ink gleamed black against the parchment, every letter bold and certain. Richard watched, shaking his head slightly. You're playing a dangerous game, Elena. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a smirk. I don't play games, Richard. I shape legacies. She slid the signed papers back toward him. File these immediately. I want the shares in Scarlett's name by morning. Richard gathered the documents carefully, slipping them back into his briefcase as if they carried explosives. She doesn't even know this is happening. She will, Elena replied, her eyes on the skyline. And when she does, she will either rise to the challenge or walk away. But if she walks away, Grant will finally see what it means to lose something he cannot buy back. The sun dipped lower over Manhattan, its glow reflecting off the towers of steel and glass. Inside that office, the future of one of the city's most powerful empires had quietly shifted. 20% of Costatec now belonged to a woman who didn't yet realize she held the power to redefine it. And across town, in a penthouse full of mismatched pillows and half-burnt pancakes, Scarlett Miller laughed at one of her own jokes, blissfully unaware that she had just become one of the most influential women in New York. Scarlett had hoped the madness of the last few days would fade once she returned to work. The Meridian Hotel was her safe ground, a world of corporate clients, event checklists, and predictable schedules. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. She needed the stability, especially after being dragged into a billionaire family circus she hadn't chosen. She arrived promptly at 8 a.m., notepad in hand, her nerves steadied by routine. But the moment she stepped into the polished lobby, her sense of normalcy cracked. A new plaque gleamed on the management office door. Malfada Winters, General Manager. Scarlett's stomach sank. Malfada. The same Malfada who had made her life miserable back in college. The rival who turned every grade, every internship, every competition into a personal battleground. If Scarlett landed an A, Malfada claimed it was luck. If Scarlett got a promotion, Malfada whispered it was favoritism. And now, fate had placed her directly above Scarlett on the corporate ladder. Scarlett smoothed her blouse, bracing herself, and knocked. The office door swung open. Malfada looked up from behind a mahogany desk, her smile sharp as glass. Scarlett Miller, what a wonderful surprise. Still working events, I see. Scarlett forced a polite smile. Good morning, Malfada. Congratulations on your promotion. Thank you. Malfada's tone dripped with satisfaction. I expect excellence from my team. I do hope you're up to the challenge. Before Scarlett could reply, another voice entered. Smooth, familiar, and immediately infuriating. Well, if it isn't Scarlett, Scarlett turned. Mark? Lisa's ex, the cheater, now standing in a navy blue suit, leather briefcase in hand. Her jaw tightened. "What are you doing here?" Mark's grin widened. "I've just been hired as the hotel's new financial consultant. I'll be reviewing budgets, contracts, and cost-benefit reports. Looks like we'll be working closely together." Scarlett's pulse spiked, of course. Malfada and Mark side by side. The universe wasn't cruel by accident. This was deliberate. Malfada clasped her hands together with feigned delight. "Isn't it wonderful? Such talented people, reunited under one roof. I'm sure we'll make a formidable team." Scarlett could already feel the trap forming. Malfada and Mark together meant sabotage wasn't a possibility. It was inevitable. The first blow came swiftly. At the morning staff meeting, Malfada projected Scarlett's upcoming schedule onto the screen. "Scarlett, for Thursday's corporate gala, why did you choose red roses? Don't you think that's a bit ordinary?" Scarlett kept her composure. "The red roses were a specific request from the client." Malfada tilted her head, lips curling. Following instructions is one thing. Creativity is another. Do try harder next time." Mark chimed in smoothly. "Speaking of Thursday, the event budget is already 12% over. Scarlett, how do you explain that?" "The client requested last-minute menu changes. Everything was approved in writing by previous management." Malfada sighed theatrically. "Previous management?" "Yes, well, we have higher standards now. Let's avoid excuses." The staff glanced at Scarlett with uncertainty. She held her chin high, refusing to show frustration. But the message was clear. Malfada and Mark were painting her as incompetent. By the second week, the sabotage grew sharper. Malfada reassigned her to impossible back-to-back events with no staff support. Mark discovered financial discrepancies in projects Scarlett had overseen, conveniently glossing over the signed approvals. The final straw came at a high-profile investor reception. Malfada pulled Scarlett aside that morning. "The reception starts at 7 p.m. Don't be late. Punctuality is everything." But when Scarlett arrived at 6:50, the ballroom was already full of irritated guests. The event had started at 6. Malfada's voice rang out across the room. "Scarlett, there you are. The event began an hour ago. Care to explain?" Scarlett's face burned. "You told me 7. The schedule Mark held up said otherwise. 6 o'clock, printed in bold black. "This is unacceptable," Malfada declared, her voice carrying. "Our clients cannot suffer because of your negligence." Scarlett clenched her fists, every instinct screaming that this was a setup. But surrounded by guests, staff, and Mark's smug expression, she had no proof. "I'll fix this," she said evenly, pushing through the humiliation to salvage what she could. And she did. Despite the chaos, Scarlett coordinated the catering, redirected entertainment, and smoothed over the clients with grace. By the end of the night, the investors were satisfied. But the damage to her reputation was done. Back in her apartment that night, Scarlett collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling. She had thought marriage to a billionaire stranger was the peak of absurdity. But facing Malfada and Mark together, this was war, and she would need every ounce of fire she had left to survive it. Scarlett checked her planner for the 10th time. Thursday's corporate gala, 7 p.m. sharp. Malfada had told her that herself, her tone condescending but clear. Scarlett had triple-checked the schedule, emailed confirmations, even called the florist to ensure delivery at 6:30. Everything was in place. By 6:50, Scarlett rushed through the hotel lobby, clipboard in hand, hair neatly pinned back. She rehearsed the checklist in her mind. Seating chart, menu, entertainment. She pushed open the ballroom doors and froze. The room was already full. Investors mingled near the bar, waiters circulated with champagne flutes, and the band was halfway through its second set. Scarlett's heart stopped. It was supposed to start at 7. Every eye seemed to turn toward her at once. And then came Malfada's voice, loud enough to slice through the music. "Scarlett, how thoughtful of you to finally join us. The event began an hour ago." The words hit like a slap. Guests glanced at their watches, whispering. Scarlett's stomach lurched. She opened her mouth, but before she could explain, Mark stepped forward with his ever-smooth delivery. "I warned about this," he said, holding up a tablet. "The official schedule has always listed 6 o'clock. He turned the screen toward the crowd. The document glared back, bold black letters reading 6 p.m. start. Scarlett blinked in disbelief. She remembered Malfada leaning across her desk, saying, 7, don't be late. Had she misheard? No, this was deliberate. A setup. Scarlett forced herself to stand tall, though her pulse pounded in her ears. There's been a miscommunication. But the important thing is that I'm here now, and everything will run flawlessly from this point forward. Malfada folded her arms, voice dripping with mock sympathy. Miscommunication? Or negligence? Investors deserve better than excuses. Scarlett clenched her clipboard tighter, willing herself not to snap. The humiliation was suffocating. Guests eyed her with skepticism, some already murmuring about poor organization, but she refused to collapse. "Excuse me," she said with forced calm. "If you'll allow me, I'll ensure the evening proceeds without further issue." And she did. Within minutes, Scarlett smoothed over the cracks. She directed staff to refill empty trays, rearranged seating when two executives arrived without notice, and convinced the band to extend their set until dessert. By 9 o'clock, the gala looked seamless, the guests smiling again. But just as she allowed herself a breath of relief, Mark struck again. He approached with the finance team at his side, voice pitched for everyone nearby to hear. "Scarlett," he said, scrolling through his tablet. "The floral arrangements ran 10% over budget. Care to explain why your choices consistently exceed cost projections?" Scarlett felt her face heat. "The client requested premium roses yesterday. The changes were approved in writing." Mark tilted the screen, displaying a spreadsheet. "I see no such approval. What I do see is poor financial oversight. Patterns like this jeopardize the hotel's credibility." A murmur spread through the small cluster of staff and guests. Scarlett knew the approvals had been real. She had them. Somewhere. But not here, not in front of a crowd eager for a spectacle. Malfada stepped forward, her tone sharp. "This isn't the first complaint. Scarlett, your performance has been disappointing. Perhaps event coordination isn't your strength after all." The words sliced deep. Every humiliation from the past weeks, the sudden schedule changes, the manipulated budgets, the constant undercutting, they were building into a wall of doubt that Malfada and Mark were only too eager to cement. Scarlett inhaled slowly, steadying her voice. "I will not discuss internal budgets in front of clients. If you have questions, we can review them in the office tomorrow." Malfada's lips twitched, irritated that Scarlett hadn't crumbled publicly. "Fine," she said, "but make no mistake, this will be addressed." As the night wore on, Scarlett kept her head high, but inside she was unraveling. She had salvaged the event, yet the humiliation clung to her like smoke. No matter how hard she worked, Malfada and Mark twisted every detail into failure. Back in her apartment hours later, Scarlett stared at the ceiling, exhaustion pressing heavy on her chest. She had married into a billionaire family by accident, but here she was being crushed by old enemies who had no idea she now held power greater than either of them could imagine. For now, she kept that secret locked inside. But one thing was certain. If Malfada and Mark wanted war, Scarlett Miller was not going down quietly. Scarlett arrived at the hotel the next morning with a knot in her stomach. After the disaster of the gala, she braced herself for the inevitable ambush. Sure enough, Malfada summoned her into the manager's office before she'd even set her bag down. "Scarlett," Malfada said sweetly, tapping a manicured nail against the desk. "Last night's performance was unacceptable. Clients don't pay for confusion and missed schedules. This is a 5-star establishment, not amateur hour." Mark leaned casually against the wall, arms folded, a smirk tugging at his lips. "And financially, the event was a mess, overages everywhere. Investors don't like sloppy management." Scarlett forced herself to stand tall. "I salvaged the gala. The clients left satisfied, regardless of your sabotage." Malfada's eyes narrowed. "Sabotage? That's a dangerous word, Scarlett. Careful what you accuse people of." The office door swung open before Scarlett could reply. A hush fell. Elena Costa walked in as though the space belonged to her, pearls gleaming, every step radiating command. Grant followed behind, sharp in a navy suit, his expression unreadable. Malfada shot to her feet. "Mrs. Costa, what a surprise!" Elena cut her off with a look so cold it silenced the room. "Spare me. I've already reviewed the footage from last night." Scarlett blinked. "Footage?" Grant nodded, his gaze sweeping across Mark and Malfada. "The hotel's security cameras caught everything, including you," he said, looking directly at Malfada, telling Scarlett the event started at 7. Color drained from Malfada's face. That's not what happened." Elena's voice sliced like a blade. "Enough. I don't tolerate liars. You tried to humiliate my daughter-in-law in front of my city's elite. That was your first mistake." Scarlett's breath caught. "Daughter-in-law." Elena said it like a title carved in stone. Elena turned her piercing gaze on Mark. "And you? Financial accusations without proof? Fabricated spreadsheets? Do you think I wouldn't have my people cross-check the numbers? I built empires before you learned how to tie a tie." Mark's smirk faltered. He shifted uneasily under her glare. Scarlett stood frozen, the tension in the room choking. "Wait," she said quietly. "Why are you even here? This is my workplace, not yours." Elena stepped closer, her eyes never wavering. "Because, Scarlett, you're not just an employee here anymore. You're Costa." Scarlett blinked. By marriage, yes, that's not the same. Oh, it is, Elena said, sliding a folder across Malfada's desk. You see, Scarlet, while you were fighting small wars here, I was preparing you for the real battlefield. 20% of Costa Tech is in your name. You are one of the largest shareholders in one of the most powerful companies in the United States. The words slammed into Scarlet like a tidal wave. Her knees nearly buckled. 20%? What? No, that's impossible. I didn't sign anything. You didn't need to, Elena said calmly. I signed it for you. You are my son's wife. That makes you family. And family holds power. Scarlet's throat tightened. You gave me control in a billion-dollar empire? I plan hotel events. I burn pancakes in your son's kitchen. Grant stepped forward, his face pale. Mother, this is insane. You put my company, our company, in the hands of someone who doesn't even want it. Elena's gaze flicked to him sharply. Correction, Grant. Your company was suffocating under your arrogance. Scarlet is the oxygen it needs. She is unafraid of you, unafraid of titles, unafraid of power. That makes her the future. Scarlet's mind spun. The sabotage at the hotel, the humiliation, all of it seemed insignificant compared to the weight Elena had just dropped onto her shoulders. She wasn't just Scarlet Miller anymore. She was Scarlet Costa, 1/5 owner of Costa Tech, a name whispered in boardrooms across Manhattan. Grant turned to Scarlet, searching her face. Did you know? She shook her head furiously. No, I didn't even want this. I just wanted to defend my friend from a cheater, and somehow I ended up... Elena's hand landed firmly on Scarlet's shoulder. You ended up exactly where you're meant to be. Stop underestimating yourself. You have the strength to fight wolves. I've already seen it. And the wolves at Costa Tech are hungrier than these petty saboteurs. Scarlet swallowed hard, her chest tight. She didn't feel strong. She felt overwhelmed, trapped between the life she had known and a billionaire world she never asked for. But as she looked at Malfada and Mark shrinking under Elena's scorn, something shifted. For the first time, Scarlet realized she had the power to crush them. Not just here, but everywhere. Elena's voice cut through her thoughts, steady and final. You are the future face of this company, Scarlet. Whether you accept it now or later, the Empire already bears your name. The next morning, Scarlet walked into the Meridian Hotel, not as the nervous coordinator Malfada had mocked, but as someone carrying weight she hadn't even asked for. 20% of Costa Tech. A title that meant nothing to her yesterday, but everything to the people who lived and died by corporate hierarchies. The lobby hummed with the usual rhythm of suitcases rolling and phones buzzing, but the staff glanced at her differently now. Word had traveled. Elena Costa's daughter-in-law wasn't just a coordinator anymore. She was power-wrapped in navy heels and determination. Scarlet didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed open Malfada's office door. Malfada and Mark sat inside, mid-conversation, their faces tightening when they saw her. Well, Malfada said, forcing a smile, if it isn't our star coordinator, here to defend yourself again? Scarlet closed the door softly behind her, then laid a folder on the desk. No, I'm here to finish this. Mark leaned back, smirking. You don't get to make demands here. Malfada's your boss, and I'm the one who controls your budgets. Scarlet met his gaze without flinching. Not anymore. I had the finance team review your records, Mark. Turns out those discrepancies you kept blaming on me, they lead back to your own files. Double billing, inflated vendor costs. You've been skimming. The color drained from his face. That's a lie. Is it? Scarlet slid copies of the reports across the desk. These are already in Elena Costa's hands. By tonight, every major hotel in this city will know you can't be trusted with a calculator, let alone their books. Mark's jaw tightened, sweat beading at his temples. Scarlet turned to Malfada, her voice steady. And as for you, telling staff false event times, sabotaging your own coordinator in front of clients, manipulating documents, that isn't management. That's misconduct. Effective immediately, you're fired. HR has the paperwork. Malfada shot up from her chair, outrage blazing. You can't do this. I run this hotel. No, Scarlet said firmly, her chin lifted. You ran it. Now you're finished. For the first time, the room went silent. No smirks, no power plays, just the stunned realization that Scarlet Miller had won. Hours later, she stood outside on the hotel steps, the cool air brushing her face. Grant appeared beside her, hands in his pockets, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. You handled them well, he said. Scarlet gave a wry laugh. I still feel like I'm dreaming. Yesterday, I was just trying to save my job. Today, I'm dismantling careers with a folder of evidence. Grant studied her, the corners of his mouth twitching. Maybe my mother was right. About what? That you're exactly what this family needed. You don't care about the name, you don't care about the money, and that's why you can handle both better than people who do. Scarlett looked at him, searching for sarcasm, but there was none. Just sincerity, raw and unexpected. "I didn't ask for this," she said quietly. "No," Grant admitted, "but maybe sometimes the best things come when we don't ask." They stood in silence, the weight of unspoken truths between them. Their relationship wasn't love, not yet, maybe not for a long time, but for the first time, it wasn't war either. It was something fragile, real, and strangely promising. Across the street, Elena Costa watched from the backseat of her town car, a satisfied smile curving her lips. Her gamble had worked. The whirlwind girl who once barged into a cafe shouting about betrayal had just proven she could stand against wolves and win. The car pulled away, and Elena whispered to herself, "Yes, Scarlett, you'll do." Back on the steps, Scarlett exhaled, the city buzzing around her. Her life had been rewritten in ways she still didn't understand, but one thing was clear: she wasn't powerless anymore. And as the narrator's voice closes the tale, injustice has a way of rewriting destinies. Scarlett thought she was defending a friend, but instead, she became the face of an empire. What would you do in Scarlett's shoes? Comment your city below, rate the story from 0 to 10, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.